Can a simple touch on the skin say more than 1,000 words? Can a hug that lasts just 2 seconds reveal a hidden feeling, a contained desire, an attraction that still dares not be spoken? The answer is yes. Absolutely yes. The body speaks when the soul remains silent. And in the silent art of physical contact, men often express what they have not yet been able to put into words. Every gesture, every touch, every small caress contains an emotional truth that goes far beyond what is visible. Carl Jung, the great Swiss psychoanalyst, wrote in his book, Man and His Symbols, "The unconscious expresses itself through symbols and gestures long before the conscious mind can give it verbal form. And there is no older or more meaningful symbol than the act of touching." Today, we will explore the 5 places where a man typically touches a woman when he feels authentic interest. These are not rough or invasive touches. We are talking about subtle, spontaneous gestures, full of intention, that create an invisible bridge of intimacy. You will see how the first greeting can transform into a silent confession, how a seemingly innocent touch on the arm can be a declaration of care and respect, how brief contact on the lower back can be an instinctive way to protect and emotionally draw closer. We will also discover the powerful language hidden in the hands, those touches that seem accidental, those playful gestures that aren't as casual as they appear to be. But to see this, you must learn to truly observe. You have to look not only at the contact, but at the energy that accompanies it. Is it a quick, distant touch? Or is it slow, warm, and accompanied by a lingering gaze? Is it awkward and uncomfortable? Or does it flow naturally, as if the body is speaking its own language? Always remember that in love, as Jung said in Man and His Symbols, contact with another human being is, in its purest form, a fusion of the collective unconscious. When a man feels something true, his body leaves traces, invisible footprints that only those who know how to read them can recognize. Today, I will teach you how to read those traces, to recognize when a gesture is not casual, but a silent confession of interest, of desire, of deep connection. Because in a world full of empty words, authentic gestures are the only language that cannot lie. The initial contact, the greeting. The first physical contact between a man and a woman might seem trivial, a handshake, a fleeting hug, an accidental touch. But for those who know how to look, these gestures hide much deeper secrets than the words that accompany them. When a man feels genuine attraction, his natural impulse is not to distance himself, but to come closer. He doesn't need to think about it. His body betrays him, revealing it before his mind even comprehends it. In the first greeting, everything is activated: the desire for connection, the need to reduce emotional distance, the primal urge to create an invisible bridge between 2 separate worlds. And it is here that the small gestures begin to speak for him. If his greeting is limited to a cold, brief handshake, accompanied by a body that barely leans toward you, that distance is not accidental. His body language is screaming that there is no significant emotional interest. It may be courtesy, it may be respect, but it is not deep attraction. In contrast, when the greeting becomes something more, like a gentle touch on your back, or a hug that lasts a few seconds longer than necessary, the story changes completely. A man who feels authentic interest wants to prolong the moment of initial contact. He wants to hold on to the connection as soon as it is established, sustain it, extend it, nourish it in silence, feeling a kind of magnetism that drives him to get closer. His hug will be warm, firm, but not invasive. His hand may briefly rest on your lower back, exerting light but secure pressure, as if he wants to protect you, anchor you there with him. Carl Jung explained this masterfully in The Dynamics of the Unconscious, when he said that emotional impulses arising from the unconscious tend to manifest first through the body in spontaneous gestures and impulsive movements. This is how the male unconscious, filled with emotions not yet verbalized, finds its first channel of expression in the initial touch. Observe closely. What is the energy conveyed by his greeting? Is it warm, relaxed, sincere? Is it fleeting, rapid, contained? Does his hug seem like a social formality? or is it a moment that both of you feel could last forever? The firmness with which he holds you also speaks volumes. A weak handshake or an overly soft hug can reveal insecurity, lack of interest, or extreme nervousness, while a secure yet gentle hold shows a genuine desire to protect and connect, not dominate. Moreover, men who are emotionally involved tend to slightly tilt their heads toward you in the greeting, bringing their ear closer to your voice as if trying to capture it beyond the words being spoken. This small, almost imperceptible gesture is another silent symbol of deep interest. In situations where a full hug is not possible, such as in formal encounters or public events, you can also notice other micro-gestures. For example, briefly touching your elbow while shaking your hand, keeping the palm open and visible as an unconscious sign of honesty, or softly brushing your shoulder as an excuse to establish a small extra contact. Even the way he pulls his hand away can reveal much. A man who feels true emotional connection may take a fraction of a second longer to release your hand, as if his skin, despite everything, resists losing the contact. That split second speaks more than an entire speech. Each of these gestures constructs a message. I'm here, I'm open to you, I want to get closer. And while socially a man might justify each of these contacts as polite gestures, his unconscious knows the truth. As Jung said in The Dynamics of the Unconscious, the conscious mind may disguise, but the body never does. It's fascinating how even the most reserved or shy men reveal themselves in this first contact. Though their verbal language may be cautious or measured, their bodies will involuntarily lean toward you. Their posture will open slightly, and their gestures will seek to create opportunities to touch you in subtle but significant ways. That's why learning to read these signs requires sensitivity. It's not just about seeing what he does, but how he does it and what energy lies behind the gesture. One hug can have 1,000 nuances. One can be cold, while another may burn with contained emotion. So the first greeting is much more than a formality. It is the stage where the unconscious first manifests, where the heart speaks before the mouth finds the courage to do so. Learn to read this moment, to feel the energy that emanates from each small gesture, because sometimes, in those few seconds of a greeting, the most sincere confession of all is hidden. In that first contact, more than any word, is the key that can open the mystery of the male heart. The arm, a bridge of strength and trust. When a man feels genuine attraction, his need to create physical connection doesn't arise solely from a romantic or passionate impulse. Often, the first area he explores is trust, and one of the most symbolic places to build this bridge of closeness is the arm. It may seem like an insignificant gesture, a brief touch, a hand gently resting on your forearm as he laughs, or a light caress when he emphasizes something important during a conversation. But behind this gesture lies an entire universe of emotional meanings. The arm symbolically represents strength, protection, and openness. It is one of the areas of the body where physical contact is socially acceptable and non-invasive. That's why, when a man repeatedly and naturally touches your arm, he is silently saying, "I am here for you. You can trust me." Carl Jung, in The Soul and Life, explains that the act of touching, when it is not imposed but offered, constitutes one of the first symbols of conscious protection between humans. And this is exactly what happens when his hand spontaneously and authentically brushes your arm. This kind of contact tends to appear during shared laughter, when he's excited about a story, or when he feels the need to reinforce something he deems important. He does it almost instinctively, but the act reveals much more than his words can express. It's important to observe several nuances here. Frequency. If the gesture is repeated throughout the conversation, it's a clear indicator that he's trying to maintain a small, constant physical link with you. Naturalness. The more fluid and casual the contact, the more genuine the interest behind it. Forced or awkward gestures indicate nervousness or insecurity, but not necessarily lack of interest. Duration. A brief but warm touch that doesn't feel rushed conveys comfort and a desire for closeness. You should also pay attention to his immediate reaction after the touch. If he smiles, keeps the conversation relaxed, or looks you in the eye, he's confirming that the contact was intentional and positive. On the other hand, if he quickly withdraws his hand, avoids eye contact, or appears tense, it could indicate insecurity or fear of being misinterpreted. A fascinating detail many overlook. When a man truly feels emotionally connected to you, his hand doesn't just touch but intuitively adapts to the temperature and texture of your skin. His thumb might subtly caress the outer part of your arm, as if trying to memorize that moment of closeness. If you notice that during the conversation, he prefers to lean in closer to you, his body slightly turning toward you, and he uses any excuse to make brief contact in this area, it's almost certain that his interest goes beyond mere friendliness. As Jung said in The Soul and Life, all genuine attraction carries with it the unconscious impulse to protect the object of that attraction. Therefore, the arm, as a symbol of strength and care, becomes the perfect place to begin this silent dynamic of protection and tenderness. In more formal environments, where an embrace or more intimate contact might be inappropriate, the arm becomes a kind of neutral ground. It doesn't invade, it doesn't discomfort, but it still creates a bond. A brief touch on the forearm can build an entire wall of emotions that carefully crafted words could never construct. Another powerful sign occurs when, while touching your arm, he simultaneously uses an open smile, a body leaned toward you, and a sincere gaze. This triple combination is highly revealing. It means that he doesn't just want to get closer physically, but emotionally as well. So the next time you feel that light pressure on your arm, don't dismiss it as a simple casual gesture. Ask yourself, what energy accompanies that touch? What expression is in his eyes? How does his body respond after the contact? Because sometimes the first bridge between two hearts isn't built with grand declarations, but with a small, warm, and respectful touch on the arm. And it is there, in that simple gesture, but full of meaning, where true emotional complicity begins. The lower back, protection, and closeness. There are areas of the body whose intimate and delicate nature immediately establishes an implicit level of trust between two people, and the lower back is undoubtedly one of the most revealing areas. In this regard, it is neither offered nor touched without an existing, either conscious or unconscious, emotional bond in formation. When a man feels genuine and authentic interest in a woman, his body, often before his mind, manifests a primary need to protect her, to get closer without invading, to build a space of security around her. And one of the most representative gestures of this protective impulse is precisely the light brushing or support of his hand on the lower part of her back. This is not casual or accidental. This gesture often arises spontaneously in everyday situations, like when they need to navigate a crowded space, or when instinctively he seeks to create a micro-environment of proximity and connection, using his body to mark a safe presence without needing to say a word. Carl Jung, in his work The Development of Personality, stated that the instinctive need to protect arises as a primary expression of an emotional bond that has not yet been rationalized, reminding us that many times our deepest emotions find their first expression in gestures and bodily attitudes before they are rationalized through spoken words. Contact in this sensitive area, loaded with symbolism, conveys a clear and powerful message. I am with you. I see you. I want to care for you. And while it may seem like a simple gesture to those who do not observe carefully, for those who know how to interpret the subtle language of the human body, it is an act full of emotional meaning. The key to correctly interpreting this type of gesture lies in observing not only the act of touching, but all the energy that surrounds it. A soft, respectful, brief touch denotes care and a genuine desire for connection, while a rushed, harsh, or invasive gesture reveals insecurity, discomfort, or even a different, less pure intention. Moreover, the moment following the contact is equally revealing. If, after gently brushing your back, he maintains a sincere smile, an open posture, and a gaze reflecting calmness and closeness, you can be sure that his gesture came from the genuine impulse to emotionally connect. not from seeking a superficial or empty physical touch. In social contexts where the crowd could easily justify such touches, it's precisely in the nuance of the intention where the emotional truth hides. A man who is truly interested doesn't simply look for an excuse to touch, but his contact has a protective, almost instinctive quality, as if creating a refuge amidst the bustle. Jung also pointed out in The Development of Personality that the soul does not surrender to a shout, but to the whisper of a protective gesture, a reflection that invites us to understand that the most authentic bonds are not proclaimed in grand declarations, but are insinuated and built through simple, almost invisible gestures, yet filled with an emotional depth that only attentive eyes can perceive. In this sense, the touch on the lower back becomes one of the most sincere whispers of the body. It needs no adornments or justifications. It simply happens as a silent expression of care, interest, and a desire to approach in a respectful and meaningful way. Therefore, when you notice that a man, while passing close to you, gently brushes that area or places his hand lightly and almost ethereally to guide or protect you, don't interpret it as a trivial or casual gesture. Instead, ask yourself, what energy accompanies this contact? What intention vibrates in the instant when his skin touches yours? When the interest is genuine, these types of gestures do not cause discomfort or alarm, but rather awaken a sense of trust, a silent complicity, as if both of you shared a secret language that can only be spoken with the body, even though the contact lasts only a moment. If it is charged with that protective and affectionate energy, its emotional impact will be much more lasting than any word. Touching that area of the body not only implies physical closeness, but also an act of vulnerability and emotional surrender from the one who performs it. So the next time you feel a hand gently brush your lower back in a moment of movement or social transition, don't limit yourself to feeling the touch on your skin, but pay attention to what beats underneath, the intention to protect, to get closer, to create a small shared refuge deep down. And as Jung often pointed out in his studies on the human psyche, the smallest gestures are the ones that reveal the greatest truths. And in that almost imperceptible touch, you can discover the whisper of a heart that begins to confess itself even before daring to speak. The hands, a deep emotional connection between all the channels of expression in the human body. The hands occupy a special, almost sacred place as instruments of connection, surrender, and deep emotional communication. It's no coincidence that throughout history, hands have symbolized both creation and protection, the offering of help and openness toward others. When a man feels genuine attraction and real emotional interest in a woman, the way he uses his hands changes in a nearly imperceptible way to the untrained eye. But it is tremendously eloquent to those who have learned to observe the silent dance of body language. Through small touches, seemingly casual gestures, or brief but meaningful contacts, the hands become the emissaries of the heart, voices that, even before the man dares to speak of his feelings, are already silently narrating his story. Carl Jung, in his work Archetypes and the Collective Unconscious, pointed out that the symbol of the hand, in its deepest manifestation, represents the union of the internal with the external, the tangible expression of an emotional impulse. In other words, when a man seeks your hand, your forearm, or even your fingers in gestures that seem simple, he is actually trying to create a bridge between his inner world and yours. For example, observe how during an animated conversation, he may laugh and in a spontaneous act of joy, let his hand briefly touch your forearm or even your fingers, as if physical contact were an inevitable extension of his emotion. Or how, when handing you an object, a glass, a book, or any ordinary excuse, his fingers seek to brush yours, not in an obvious or clumsy way, but subtly, as if savoring the privilege of minimal contact, yet immensely meaningful. In more intimate moments, he may lightly play with your hand, touching it, caressing it, intertwining his fingers with yours in a carefree manner. But if you pause to feel the energy that emanates from these gestures, you'll notice that behind their apparent lightness, there is a deep yearning for closeness and emotional communion. Hands, in their genuine contact, speak of the need to belong, the will to create a bond that goes beyond the body and reaches the soul. It's no coincidence that many cultures associate the act of holding hands with a tacit commitment of protection, care, and emotional connection. Hands that seek and find each other are essentially symbols of two hearts beginning to beat in sync. In the dynamics of genuine flirting, manual contact is often charged with a special energy. It's not a rough or invasive touch, but one that respects rhythms, pauses, and shared silences, as if the hands were dancing a silent choreography dictated by the desire to be closer, to merge two emotional spaces into one. Jung, in Archetypes and the Collective Unconscious, reflected that the collective unconscious manifests through ancestral gestures that connect human beings with their most basic need: to be seen, to be touched, to be recognized. And in this context, the touch of hands is not simply a social gesture, but the expression of an emotional need, much older and more essential. When a man feels something real, his hands act as extensions of his vulnerability. He risks approaching, being rejected, but he does it because the need for connection outweighs the fear of rejection. Pay attention to how often his fingers seek yours, to how his hands find excuses to come closer to yours, because in this silent insistence lies the most honest confession of his heart. And above all, observe how his overall body language changes when there's hand contact. His gaze softens, his voice becomes more intimate, his breath synchronizes almost imperceptibly with yours, as if all his being wanted to tell you without words, "I am here with you, and I don't want to be anywhere else." Manual contact, in its purest form, does not just communicate affection, but also respect. Respect for your space, respect for your person, respect for the connection being built between you both. So the next time you feel those light touches, those small games of hands, those fleeting caresses disguised as casual gestures, don't dismiss them as mere momentary impulses. In them resides the emotional truth of someone who, without yet daring to put it into words, is already telling you that he wants to be close to you, that he finds in your presence a home for his emotions. In the subtle art of human contact, hands are the first messengers of budding love, and their silent language, when properly interpreted, reveals more than any speech could ever reach. Light and playful touches, complicity in action. Within the vast universe of body language, there are certain gestures that, although they may seem superficial or purely playful at first glance, are actually deeply imbued with complex and subtle emotional meanings. Light and playful touches represent one of the oldest and most natural ways through which humans, and particularly men who are emotionally interested, express a desire to build a special complicity, to create an intimate space wrapped in laughter, tenderness, and spontaneous closeness. When a man feels genuinely attracted, he doesn't just seek formal or protective contact, but in a more advanced stage of emotional connection. His unconscious impulse leads him to incorporate play as a bridge to reinforce intimacy without violating the sense of lightness that allows everything to flow naturally. Carl Jung, in The Psychology of the Unconscious, affirmed that play is a symbolic manifestation of the soul, a space where the collective unconscious finds expression through gestures of creativity, closeness, and emotional liberation, meaning that through playful and seemingly insignificant touches, a man is actually opening a door to his innermost emotional world. In practice, this type of contact can manifest in various ways. A light push on the shoulder in the middle of a shared joke, a spontaneous gesture of tucking a rebellious strand of your hair behind your ear, or the affectionate adjustment of a piece of clothing that doesn't really need correction, but becomes the perfect excuse to shorten the distance between you both. These small gestures, far from being mere fleeting occurrences, act as true catalysts for emotional intimacy. The light touch on the shoulder, accompanied by a genuine laugh, not only invites sharing a moment of joy, but also conveys a deep sense of, "I trust you, I want you to trust me." The man who performs these touches doesn't do so consciously or with calculated strategy. Rather, his body, guided by affectionate impulses, responds spontaneously, to the need to strengthen a bond that goes far beyond superficial attraction. At this point, it's essential to pay attention not only to the action itself, but to the whole set of signals that accompany it. A wide smile, a special sparkle in his eyes, a relaxed posture directed towards you. All of these are indicators that the playful gesture is, in essence, an offering of trust and vulnerability wrapped in the lightness of humor. We should not underestimate the power these small contacts have in revealing the true nature of a man's feelings. As Jung also warned in The Psychology of the Unconscious, through spontaneous gestures, the soul reveals truths that reason has not yet dared to confess. In other words, in those light and seemingly harmless touches, there may lie the silent confession of deep and sincere interest. Play, in this context, is not a triviality, but an instinctive emotional strategy that allows the exploration of closeness without the weight of a formal declaration. It's a way of saying, I want to be close to you, without openly stating it, while still respecting the rhythms and freedom of the other person. Moreover, these playful gestures have the virtue of building positive emotional memories between both individuals. Every small touch, every shared laugh, every gesture of affection disguised as humor weaves a web of affectionate memories that naturally and spontaneously strengthen the connection. A man who repeatedly seeks to create these micro-moments of complicity is, at the core, building a secret language between the two of you, a shared language made of gestures, glances, light caresses, and knowing smiles. So when you feel that little push on your shoulder, that hand adjusting your hair, or gently fixing your clothing with a nearly childlike tenderness, remember that behind each gesture lies a deeper intention that transcends the surface of the act. The intention to get closer, to belong, to create a shared emotional space. Playful and light touches are, therefore, much more than mere expressions of sympathy. They are the early manifestation of an emotional bond that, if reciprocated, can evolve into a deep, authentic, and lasting connection. And in that seemingly innocent play, in that search for contact through joy and tenderness, resides one of the most beautiful and authentic signs of a man's genuine interest in a woman. The human body, with its ancestral wisdom, speaks long before the mind finds the right words, and in the smallest gestures, in a brush on the arm, a subtle caress on the back, the playful intertwining of fingers, hide the silent confessions of those who still don't dare to expose their feelings with explicit phrases. Today, we have explored 5 places where the male body reveals itself authentically, building bridges of trust, protection, tenderness, and complicity. Each touch, each gesture, each small physical connection carries with it a much deeper message than any well-crafted speech. Carl Jung, in his work Symbols of Transformation, wrote, "Emotional truth is hidden under layers of symbolic gestures, waiting to be discovered by those who know how to interpret the signs of the soul." And precisely this is what you have learned today. To look beyond the surface, to feel the energy that pulses behind each contact, to decipher the silent language that many ignore. But those who know how to observe will never forget. Because in the end, a man who feels real interest doesn't need a grand stage to manifest it. His body betrays him in the prolonged greeting, in the protective touch on your back, in the brief caress on your arm, in the tenderness of his hands, and in the light-hearted play of his closeness. Always remember, words can lie, gestures cannot. The energy that accompanies a true touch vibrates differently, almost unmistakably, for those who learn to feel it. And every small gesture we've explored today is a key that can open the masculine heart without the need to push or demand. Now I invite you to bring this knowledge into your daily life. Observe, feel, allow your intuition, that soft but powerful voice, to guide you in recognizing when a man is truly telling you, "You matter to me," even if I haven't yet had the courage to put it into words. And if you want to keep discovering the silent secrets of body language, emotional connection, and authentic love, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, activate notifications, and leave your like. If this video helped you see with new eyes what once seemed invisible, we'll see you in the next video, where we will continue deciphering together the codes of the soul.